Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and welcome back to the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the football games for Sunday and Monday in the NFL for Week 10. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your football picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Week 10 in the NFL. First up, we go to Germany, as this is the Munich game between the Giants and the Panthers. It's going to be 9:30 Eastern in the morning, 9:30 a.m. It's going to be on NFL Network. And we see the Giants as a pretty sizable favorite in this game, and the total is at 40 points, right around there. Now, this is a game, obviously, between two teams that have struggled quite a bit this season, two of the worst records in the league, but the Giants are pretty sizable favorites in this neutral site game, despite the Panthers earning an outright win that last game against the Saints. But I do think the Giants are big favorites for good reason. And when you look at New York, yes, it's been a disappointing season. Yes, they failed to cover the last couple of games, but they've also played a pretty brutal schedule recently. You look at their last 5 games at Seattle, against the Bengals, Eagles, at Pittsburgh, and then against the Commanders, either playoff teams or tough places to play on the road. And, honestly, they were quite competitive against both the Steelers and the Commanders in both of those games. I mean, they were only a couple of points shy of covering the spread. I mean, against the Commanders, they were 1 2-point conversion, either the first or the second one, away from covering that 4-point spread. So they've been competitive offensively. They've been able to move the ball quite well. They've ran the football very well recently. 5 yards a carry last week, 6 yards a carry the previous week. So I trust this Giants offense against one of the weakest defenses in the league. I don't think Carolina has the answers by the end of this game to cover the numbers. So the Giants don't pick up too many more wins the rest of the year, but this is one of them. I'll lay the points with the Giants. Next up, the New England Patriots taking on the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a 6.5-point favorite. Total is at 38.5 points. Now, it might be tough to lay this many points with the Bears right now after 2 disappointing results. One of them, the crazy loss on the final play against the Commanders a couple of weeks back. And then last week, just a really lackluster showing at Arizona, 29-9 the final score, only 241 total yards of offense. But I still believe this is one of the better defenses in the NFC. I think they do enough offensively to win this game and cover the number. The Patriots are kind of coming off, this is a little bit of a letdown spot after a miracle game-tying touchdown in the final play from Drake May, who got out of his sack and threw it up in the air. Somehow the Patriots tied the game. They went to overtime, did lose that game, but coming off an OT loss, I really don't want to back the Patriots on the road in this one. I still think that, we know that the struggles have been there offensively, but even the defense has not been great this season. Last week, 400 yards given up and 24 first downs to the Tennessee Titans of all teams. So I think the Bears bounce back, have a much better offensive showing, win this game, and cover the number. Next up, we see the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. This one's going to be a 1 p.m. Eastern start time on CBS. The Bills are a 4-point favorite. Total is at 47.5 points. This is a tough one. It's probably my least favorite game on the board, or one of them. When you look at the Colts last week, we were expecting a little bit of a motivational effort after Joe Flacco was named the starter, but the offense did nothing. 13 first downs. They were sacked 3 times. Couldn't run the football. Only 68 rushing yards and 13 points. Now, granted, it was against a very tough defense in the Minnesota Vikings, and it was on the road. But, still, now back at home, while the Colts have been better at home this season, this is still a very solid Bills team on both sides of the ball, and give them credit for, really getting through that kind of trap game against the Dolphins, where we liked Miami plus the points. We knew it was going to be competitive. The Bills were able to do enough, and not their best performance, but do enough to win that game at 30-27 final. For me, I just think the Bills are the much better team. I don't really love laying points to them on the road. We've seen them struggle on the road at times. Losses against the Ravens and the Texans, a close game against the Jets. But for me, I would lean towards Buffalo, and I would lean towards the under. I do think we see more of a defensive showing. So that's where I'm leaning right now. Next up, we see the Denver Broncos taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to see the Chiefs as an 8-point favorite. Total is at 42.5 points. The Chiefs last week did not cover the spread against the Bucs on Monday night, but yet another win for Kansas City. And for me, it's tough to go against the Chiefs in this matchup. The Broncos have done pretty well in this big-time underdog role against Kansas City in recent years when they're catching more than a touchdown. But, we saw the Broncos in their step-up game last week at Baltimore, 41-10 the final score. The Broncos had some moments offensively, but every opportunity that the Broncos gave the Ravens, every mistake that Denver made, Baltimore certainly took advantage of all of them, basically, in a blowout win. And I think Kansas City can certainly do the same. The defense last week wasn't their best showing. Gave the Bucs a chance to tie that game and potentially, had a good chance to win it as well if they would have won the coin toss. But Kansas City still only gave up 284 yards. I think that we see a bounce back showing at Arrowhead in this one for Kansas City. They win this game by double digits, so I'm going to lay the points with the Chiefs. Next up, we see the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Falcons are a 3.5, 4-point favorite. Total is at 46.5 points. And the Falcons have been very impressive recently. They've won 5 of their last 6 games, certainly in the driver's seat in the division in the NFC South. They've already taken down the Saints team once, 26-24. It was a close game, but for me, I just can't lay this many points with Atlanta on the road with how bad their defense has been this year. I mentioned I think it's one of the weaker defenses in the league. They've not been great against the run. They've not been great against the pass. They're giving up a 71% completion to opposing quarterbacks. They don't get much pressure on opposing QBs, and they have really big-time issues tackling. And now on the road against a Saints team that, yes, has been a disaster recently, but just fired their head coach in Dennis Allen. I love backing teams their first or even second games after firing their head coach. We usually see a very motivational effort from those teams, and I think the Saints put together maybe an outright win, but at least a cover at home, and playing with revenge even better. I think this is a great situational spot for the Saints plus the points. Next up, we see the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Niners are a 6-point favorite. Total is at 50.5 points. Now, last year, we saw the Niners had a great start to the season with a 5-0 record, but then they lost 3 straight games before their bye week against the Browns, Vikings, and Bengals. They go on the bye week and they return with a 34-3 blowout win in Jacksonville over the Jaguars. And for me, I think this is going to be a similar situation. Now, San Francisco went to the bye week after a nice win against the Cowboys, but it's definitely been a bit of a disappointing start to the year for San Fran with already 4 losses on their record. And I think this spot is a great one for them against a shorthanded Bucs team that just hasn't been as competitive recently. We saw the Bucs have a great start to the season, but now they've lost 3 games in a row. 4 of their last 5. Their defense has really struggled, and their offense also. Last week, just 284 total yards. So give me San Francisco in a big win on the road. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are a 2.5-point favorite. Totals at 45.5 points. It's tough to go against either of these teams right now. They're both on 3-game win streaks, both straight up and against the spread. But the Commanders at home, we talk about this offense and Jaden Daniels being the Rookie of the Year candidate, but the defense at home has been exceptional. 13 points per game given up, only 250 yards per game, only 14 first downs per game given up, and a 12% sack rate. That's the key for me. The Steelers' offensive line's not fared too well this season, especially in pass blocking. The Steelers' quarterbacks have been sacked on over 9% of their passing plays, 4 of them last week or last game against the Giants. That's an issue for me. Russell Wilson's looked fine so far after being named the starter, but I think this is the game where he sees a lot of pressure and makes some mistakes. I think the Commanders take advantage of those mistakes. I like Washington to win this game and cover the spread. Next up, the Jaguars and the Vikings. The Vikings are a 4.5-point favorite on the road. Total is at 45.5 points. I think this total is set a little bit too high, and this is not my favorite game on the board, similar to that Bills-Colts game, but I'd lean towards the under. I still like the Vikings have a top 5 defense in the league this season. Against the run, they've been exceptional, holding teams to under 4 yards per carry, under 85 rushing yards per game, and they've also been able to get a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. The big thing for this one is the injury status for Trevor Lawrence. Right now the line is pretty much set as if he's going to play, but if he doesn't, we'll see the Vikings is more than likely a 7-point favorite in this one. So that's going to certainly change both the spread and the total. Right now, I lean towards the under. I don't think Jacksonville does too much offensively. I think the Vikings offense has also been kind of inconsistent in recent weeks, so give me the under in Minnesota-Jacksonville. Next up, we'll go to the first 4 p.m. Eastern start time game. It's going to be the Titans and the Chargers. The Chargers are a 7.5-point favorite in this game. The total is at 38.5 points. Really low total, and we've seen some low totals in Chargers games this season. Their defense has been one of the better ones in the AFC, but for me, when you look at this Titans offense recently, they've been able to compete. Against the Patriots, 400 yards, maybe not too crazy, but we got to remember the week before that, while the turnovers piled up, the Titans still put up 416 yards against the Detroit Lions with 23 first downs. And at the beginning of that game, they were going score for score with Detroit, obviously one of the best offenses in the league. So I think this Titans offense has really improved. They're starting to run the ball a lot better. Their offensive line has held up a lot better as well. And I think that they actually can chip in some points in this game. And the Chargers offense is on a roll as well. I like the over in this game. I think this total is set way too low. Next up, one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL, the Eagles and the Cowboys. We see the Eagles as a 7-point favorite. Total is at 43.5 points. I love backup quarterbacks in the NFL, and Cooper Rush has definitely cashed a few tickets for me as a backup taking over for Dak Prescott. So this is he's been in this position before, and he's done pretty well for the Cowboys. I know Dak's a big contributor for this offense, but he is not worth 9 points in my opinion. When you look at this opening line at Dallas -2, goes through 0 to now Eagles -7. That's 9 points we're getting because of just one injury. I know it's the quarterback, but we've seen this many times before. I think the Cowboys at least cover, if not win the game outright. So give me the points with Dallas. Next up, we see the New York Jets taking on the Arizona Cardinals. This one is 4:25 Eastern on CBS. The Jets are a 1.5-point favorite on the road. We see the total at 46.5 points. Now, the Jets finally got that bounce-back win against the Texans, and it was a great defensive showing for the Jets in that one. They had 8 sacks by the end of it, and now they have extra time to prepare for this game, and I'm not ready to give up on the Jets quite yet in terms of their season outlook for a potential long-shot playoff spot. I mean, for a team that's 3-6, you would expect a lot more plus money in terms of making the playoffs right now, but the books are not giving that away because this is still a very talented Jets team. Is starting to figure things out, and offensively against the Texans, while the yards weren't amazing and the first half was pretty ugly, they started to get going in that second half, and Garrett Wilson had one of his best games of the season and a couple of highlight reel catches. So I think I like the Jets in this game because I trust their ground game a lot more. I trust their defense a lot more, and the Cardinals have been big improvements this year on the defensive side. I mean, going into the year, we've mentioned I thought Arizona was going to be the worst defensive team in the league. That hasn't been the case, but I don't think they're good enough in this matchup. And I think the Jets are favored on the road for a reason. So give me the Jets in this one. I'm going to lay the points. Next up, the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans on Sunday Night Football. This one, 8:20 Eastern on NBC. The Lions are a 3.5-point favorite. The total is at 48.5 points. And, this is a game where Detroit's on a roll right now, but they benefited a lot from the mistakes that Jordan Love made in that last game against Green Bay. And now I think in the second straight road game, I think this is a tough spot. I mean, the Texans did not play well on Thursday Night Football offensively against the Jets, and we mentioned the 8 sacks that they took, but I still think this is one of the better defensive teams in the AFC. They can hold down the Lions a little bit more than most teams can in this ball game, and it is a home game. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Houston. I think offensively we see a much better showing. And this team's been able to run the football with Joe Mixon when he's healthy. I mean, he's had an unbelievable season. He's averaging right now just under 5 yards per carry with 5 rushing touchdowns. So I think when you look at this Lions defense, it's been, we saw the Titans earn 400 yards against them. Green Bay was able to move the ball. I mean, Green Bay had 411 total yards by the end of that game. It's just been the turnovers and the mistakes. I think Houston limits those mistakes in this game and covers this number and wins it outright. Next up, the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams, the final game for the Week 10 card in the NFL. We see the Dolphins as a 1-point road dog, and the total is at 50.5 points. Now, the Rams are on a nice 3-game win streak, but I just think when you look at Miami on the other side, I think their offense is back, and I think when it is back, it's one of the more lethal offenses in the league, putting up 27 points in back-to-back games, and last week against a very good Bills defense. We saw when Tua went down and Huntley and Skylar Thompson with the quarterbacks just wasn't the same, and this team really struggled offensively. But this team now running the football a lot better. The passing game, of course, has been much better, and only 2 sacks given up in the last 2 games combined. I think the Dolphins are going to be able to score at will in this game. I think it's why we see a very steep total. And I don't think the Rams are going to be able to have the answers the whole way through, as I do think the Dolphins have the better offense right now. So give me Miami. I'm going to take them on the money line, which should be a great game, more of a shootout style game. I'd lean towards the over, but give me the Dolphins. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 10 of the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put those football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.